cracked beers open at 9 a.m., smoked cigarettes, drank beer, and just got like buzzed and off of nicotine and off of drinking.
You're alone again. I shouldn't be thinking of you, thinking of me. I know.
Hello, everyone. This is Mike, the dailyBred guy. This is the podcast that I do where I sit in my living room and I talk to myself, and I call this the weekly bread, which if you keep listening to this or have listened to this, then that's what I've been kind of calling it. Today, I looked at my list of things that I could potentially talk about, and I decided that I'm going to talk about this guy, Kenny, from when I was in high school. I was trying to it just popped in my head one day to talk about this situation where I had a friend and I totally just bailed on him. And, I mean, this doesn't bother me to this day. It's just fun to look back at different milestones in your life and either talk about like something that's really cool and happy that happened and share that, or go, man, that was a real shit thing that I did. Let me talk about that. Because maybe it's still kind of happening underneath all the layers in my brain. I was talking to someone the other day, I may have said this on here, but I have this theory that every time something in life happens, it like creates a record and it plays. So it's like, imagine a turntable and a record goes on it and you put the needle on it and it just plays a song. But what this does is a memory is being played on it and it plays in a loop consistently. But it's almost like white noise, where white noise, or when you like lose a hearing, what the hell is it? Where a hearing, fuck, what is it? God, you know when like you hear like a really high pitch sound in your ear? It's basically like an ear, whatever, dying earbud, ear thing. It's apparently, from what I heard, that it's dying and that sound is still there, but it just becomes like a white noise where you can't hear it, even though like technically you are hearing it, and it's just always there. So all of the ear things that have perished throughout your life, they're still ringing, I think. So my theory is that like a record, there's a loop. So what happens is you do something in life, it records it and it plays it on a loop, but it just kind of buries itself, but it's always playing, and then the next thing happens and that's always playing, and these things are always playing. And I really noticed this then. I noticed this when last year I started running without music, because I have somewhat bigger ears and they don't hold headphones very well. So a friend of mine, she had said that she runs without music, and I tried it and I like it a lot, because at the end of the day, when you start running, your head is fucking loud enough with all of the shit you just tell yourself, all the negative crap and all the things you're trying to work through. So by the time you get to like mile and a half, maybe 2 miles, it kind of starts to dissipate, and I notice that by the time I'm done, you get that runner's high, but that one random thought that your mind's so cluttered with this just constant noise and shit that's happening in your brain that when that starts to move away, the thing that you need to do kind of surfaces. So my thought is that, so it kind of fed into that thought where you do something, it creates this metaphorical record, and when I'm running, I basically hear all these things. And this is a very long way around to get to the story about Kenny, but I think it was running and I thought of this and I was like, man, I should talk about that, because maybe that is something that does bother me, because I never got a chance to apologize. And what happened was, I was in 8th grade. I think it was 8th grade or 7th grade. I think it was 8th grade. I know, I do this all the time. And I think it was like the summer going into my freshman year, or it was prior to that. And this guy, Ken, he was in my elementary school and we were acquaintances, but one day, like, it's like we hung out, or he showed up at my house, and I don't remember why, but we just started hanging out all the time and just became really close. Like we hung out like every day, and like we had like a we'd make up these stupid handshakes, and I don't even know what the fuck we used to talk about, but we were really tight, and we were really good friends for I don't even know how long it was, but I felt like it was like a whole school year. And then and we hung out all the time. And then when I was in my freshman year of high school, I talked about this about my band Lanemeyer. My second semester is where my good friend of this day, Chris, was in my health class, or gym. Well, gym split up where you'd have health class for a semester, and then you'd have gym the rest of the time. So I was in health class. It was the first period in the second semester because my high school did 2 semesters before Christmas and then 2 semesters before June, or leading into June. So that's how I met Chris, and we became really tight. And I kind of just stopped hanging out with Kenny because I was just like friends with Chris. And I don't know, I'm not, even to this day, I'm not good at balancing the friends that I have, where I typically kind of compartmentalize them, where if I have a group of friends, I usually will hang out with them. If I have like group of friends A, let's say, I'll hang out with them, and then I'll have group B, group C, whatever. And these are kind of like a mixture of who are my friends that are really tight that I can have really deep conversations with, and then who are my friends that are kind of borders that, but we also just party all the time or like go out all the time. And then there's the other friends where we randomly get coffee here and there. And then there's other friends where I just see them, I bump into them when I'm out and about. So it's like you can kind of see with these different categories. And I never really mesh friends together unless it's like my birthday or something, but I kind of like keep them separate because I'm pretty good at knowing how to work, how to work the room. I'm pretty good at knowing how to communicate with people. Like I can kind of see how they communicate, and I can know how to make the situation comfortable where different people have just different styles, where some people are very outgoing and they're crazy, and some people are very quiet and they don't really go out a lot. So I can kind of like chameleon that sounds so stupid, but like I can kind of match their persona, and it's like makes them comfortable, and I enjoy like just talking to people or hanging out with them, so I can kind of match what their personality is, so I can hang with them and I can just deal with just different ranges of people. And some friends aren't good with that, so I typically am like, well, I don't want to babysit, and I don't want to sit there the whole time and make sure that these group of people are getting along, so I typically just don't combine that. And I'm getting better at it, but I think when I was younger, I kind of did that where the neighborhood that I grew up in was a cul-de-sac, and there was probably like 15 or 20 kids my age, and we all used to hang out all the time at the bus stop. We'd play racquetball, where it was like we had a wiffle ball bat, and we would tape it up with duct tape and play baseball before the bus came. And then after school, we'd meet up and play like manhunt or just hang out around someone's yard or things like that. So it was like, that was pretty cool. And then when I got to high school, I kind of just left that crowd because I was like, well, I'm going to hang out with these kids that I've never met before because they're on the other side of town. And I think I'm over just hanging out and playing manhunt and hide and go seek and kick the can with my neighborhood friends. So I kind of like, I think within that I transitioned to just basically taking over everyone that I was friends with. But with Ken, I remember this very specifically. There was a summer day where Chris lived on the other side of town. Grew up in Jefferson, and the other side of town meant that the high school kind of split down the middle, where my side of town was called like Milton, and I think we were south of the school or something like that, and then the Lake Apacon was on the other side of town. So you had to drive this road called Weldon Road, which is it was just this going up a hill, like a mountain basically, and it went through the woods, and then you came out, and then you were in Lake Apacon, and there was this giant lake. So Chris lived on that side of town, And once, and the summer of freshman year or after freshman year happened, and it was like the beginning of it, and it was like 9 in the morning, I think, in June. You get this knock on the door, and usually during the summer, I would just sit home and watch TV from fucking whatever time I got up until fucking 2 in the morning, unless I had a pool, so it was cool because then the neighborhood kids would come over around 5 when my mom got home, and we would swim until like 7 or 9. Such random times to think about, and then we'd go out and play manhunt, which was great. Um, so I had a pool, and so the summer was basically starting, and this is where I was thinking like, okay, I should probably start to I don't know, venture off and venture out and get the fuck out of my house. But I didn't have a car because I was 15 or 14, I think, at the time. And this knock at the door is like 9 a.m. on a fucking Monday or Tuesday, and it was Chris. He rode his bike over from down Weldon Road, which is very dangerous. And he rode it all the way to my house, and I think it took like an hour or so. I forget how long, but he was like, "Hey, let's hang out." And I remember I was like, "Do you want to drink?" Because my mom had thrown a graduation party for my sister, and she had this cooler in the back that had all like Molson Ice, Molson Gold, just all this beer. And it was during the party, it was in the cooler, and then the ice melted, and then it just kind of stayed in the backyard for, I feel like the whole summer. It just stayed there in the cooler in water. This is my memory. And so Chris shows up, and I was like, "Do you want to drink?" Because my mom had a party. I don't think at that time I'd ever had beer, and he was smoking cigarettes. So I was like, let's go drink beers." And he's like, "Yeah." So we went into my backyard, sat like in the patio where my pool was, cracked open these warm ass fucking beers, smoked cigarettes, and then Kenny, he had bought like a pack of cigarettes and left it, like Winston's, and left them in my room. And I remember this, so I went upstairs and I like had hid them in my closet. So I pulled these out and I was like, let's smoke cigarettes and drink beer. So we're sitting. This is one of my favorite memories. This was like a blast. We sat in the back, cracked beers open at 9 a.m., smoked cigarettes, drank beer, and just got like buzzed and off of nicotine and off of drinking. And then we walked to the A&P and got like cup of noodles or something or ramen and came back and cooked it. It was like the best fucking day. And then like we kind of just kept hanging out, and I kind of just dismissed Ken. And I think like a couple weeks went by, and I think he was like calling and trying to see if we were gonna hang out. And again, like me and him hung out like every fucking day, and I just stopped talking to him. And it was a couple weeks after that, and me and Chris were hanging all the time. It was like another summer morning. Chris had stayed over. It's like back when you sleep over your friends' houses and shit. So he had stayed over, and I think this is like around the time when Mortal Kombat came out, and I had a Genesis. So I remember getting this for, I don't know, it was like my birthday. I think it was my birthday. And so we're playing that. That was the whole thing. Like someone would sleep over, you'd stay up all night, you'd watch TV, you just talk or whatever, talked about shit or life or whatever as a teenager, and then you go to bed at like 2, 3 in the morning, you wake up at 10 a.m., play Sega, and then at that time we were starting to smoke cigarettes, so we'd go out and smoke cigarettes all day. And it's the summer, so my mom was at work all day, and my sister had moved out, so I basically had this whole house to myself. It was awesome, and there was a knock at the door on this one morning, and I opened it, and it was Ken, and he was just like, "Hey," and I'm like, "Hey, man." He's like, "Where you been?" And it was almost like one of those movies where you see it's like that movie Can't Buy Me Love, where the guy's a dork, and uh what the fuck is his name? The guy who plays the dude on Grey's Anatomy. Oh my god, I can't remember his fucking name. where he like basically pays this girl to hang out with him, and he breaks up with her just so he can look cool, and then he joins the popular crowd, and then he just like hangs and he just ditches all of his friends. It was basically like kind of like that. And I was kind of like in that moment I was just like caught. I'm like, "Hey," and he's like, "What's going on?" And then Chris comes up, he's like, "Oh, what's up, Ken?" And Ken's like, "Hey, man." And so then Ken comes in, and it was like that moment very vividly was the moment where me and Kenny, like our relationship or friendship, like completely skewed. And I felt like he never forgave me for that. So he would come and hang out. So at that point, it was like me hanging out with like my buddy Chris, and then we had like my buddy Bob and Rob, and these are like all my friends to this day, which is pretty cool. My buddy Price, Woosley. So we had this whole crew that we were kind of building, like Justin and Luch. We were building this whole group of friends, and this is a time where like Luch had gotten, I think he was about to get his car, or he was coming up, he was going to get his car, and that's where when we all got our cars, we started hanging out and going to punk shows and started playing a band, and that's when basically just completely dismissed like high school and started to just want to get the fuck out of there. Um, but so Kenny started hanging out with us, but he just kind of like never like forgave me, and he would always just treat me like an asshole. And then he got like really big into smoking weed, and then that was like the first time. And there was like one time he and I were hanging out my back porch, and he just bought a bong, and we were just doing bong rips at like 3 in the afternoon or 2 in the afternoon during the summer, and I got stupidly high. I remember calling my friend Bob, and I was like, I understand why they say man, and I was just saying that over and over again. And I remember he's just like, can you just please don't call me when you're like this? I was not very good at like hiding my highness or my drunkenness. I would think Bob was the guy who was like, "All right, hey man, let me give you a little tip. Like, what you're doing right now makes you look like a fucking asshole. So you need to curb your shit." And I like took that advice and ran with it. Where I was like, "Okay, I need to like make sure that I don't look like a fucking idiot when I'm drinking or smoking." And but yeah, like Kenny got really big into weed, and then he started hanging out with kind of like I guess like the crowd in school that these kids were like big into drugs and drinking all the time, and my group of friends we kind of were in the middle where we would just hang out by ourselves and didn't really try to hang out with these other groups because we just didn't really give a shit. But there was like the jock crowd, the cool popular crowd, and then there was like the kids who were kind of like the troublemakers, I guess you'd say is like a nice term. So we kind of just started hanging out with like them, and then just got big into drugs and shit like that. And I just felt like anytime we would see each other in high school, we just completely parted ways. And then when he started smoking weed, like he kind of like left our crew and started doing his own thing. And just like never, I just never had that conversation with him. It took me, right now it's like 17 minutes, 18 minutes just to get to this point. But I never really had that conversation with him where I was like, "Hey man, I'm sorry I was such a dick. Like I handled that really poorly." And there's just like that moment where when you think about it, you kind of just feel like, oh man, like even now in my older age, it just remember that happening. And him, I remember opening the door and him sitting there just giving me this look of like, what the fuck? And it just me feeling like, oh man, I'm such an asshole. And I guess like yeah, I guess that's like still kind of there. And maybe this will, I don't know. I don't think you can really feel better about like if the goal is to tell someone you're sorry. I don't think you can really feel like that full release when you just say it out loud to a podcast. And I guess like it doesn't like go away. Maybe I don't know. Maybe I'm wrong. Feels good to say it out loud. Um, but again, like I don't wake up in the middle of the night and think like, oh my God, this is the worst thing ever. It's just one of those things, that record that's just playing, and maybe this will break that record. And that's what the other part of that theory too, I didn't explain, is that I think once you address these records that are playing, I think it kind of you metaphorically break them and they stop. spinning. And I think that's kind of like it's kind of like what I think that I'm trying to do with these podcast episodes. It's like go back through life, say things out loud because I don't like have a therapist, and I'm thinking I should definitely should get one just for they because they can actually tell me things like you should do this exercise and that'll help you with this or something. And there's definitely things on the podcast you're not gonna like tell people about. Um, but yeah, like maybe this will help break that spinning record about the time that I totally fucking dicked over a friend and felt really bad about it, and I just never got that chance to be like, and even have that conversation. I think we might have had it one time where I can remember, like, I think we were playing Manhunt again, where all the neighborhood kids, after this, we were all hanging out. I think I tried to say something to him, and I remember he just kind of dismissed me and kind of basically, like, he almost like started talking down to me like I was a piece of shit. And I was like, okay, well, that seems like the line is drawn in the sand here of how I am perceived, and I can't really. I think I tried to apologize, and he wasn't taking it, but I'm not 100% sure about that. So I think like now I try my best to not ever have that happen. I don't think that's happened again since then. Like I don't think that like I now maybe that's it. Like maybe that's why I have so many groups of friends because I don't dismiss anybody and I'll still make time for people. I think I'll make time for others, or for some more than others, because I enjoy certain friends. Like I enjoy the time with certain friends over the time with other people, where sometimes it could probably get draining, and sometimes I just really like to be by my fucking self. Just it's nothing to do with anyone else. It's just like I like my own time because I like hanging out by myself. Like I could do whatever the fuck I want without having to coordinate with people, which I really like. And but yeah, so that was today's story. And it's weird to record this and put it out there because it's like you never know, like how maybe he'd stumble upon this one day. And if he does, then I wouldn't just leave it in the podcast and be like, "Hey man, I'm sorry." Like I would hope that we can connect and be like, "Yeah, I never got a chance to say that sorry about that. I was a total shit at the age of 14, 15, wherever whatever however old I was." But okay, well, that's today's episode. Um, Other than that, I am still trying to dedicate more time to finishing that book, the checklist, and so I'm excited to push to get that out before Christmas, and that's my goal. So hopefully that happens. I think the only way that's going to happen is if I kind of call out like I've done with the 2 mile a day for a year thing, or if I like last month where I worked out for every day. Where my buddy like planned out, he gave me like a whole regimen for 30 days, and any day I missed, I would owe him $50, but I did it, so I never missed a day. So it was like 2 days where I was sick and I just could not fucking do it. But okay, that's it. Go and tell someone you're sorry if you ever dick them over.